man who the galaxy would know as Revan was as talented with the Force as he was charismatic. His ability to lead and champion others to his banners was remarkable. Able to persuade first hundreds, then thousands of Jedi and Republic soldiers to take the war to the Mandalorians themselves. But this talent could also be used for evil, for when Revan styled himself Darth and changed allegiances to the dark side, his charisma and leadership soon served to further that end.
You are listening to the Star Lords Podcast.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Are you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder?
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
The Revanchists.
But to truly comprehend it takes a wisdom that only comes with time. Several years ago, when the Mandalorian threat first arose, Revan and Malak were eager to journey to the Outer Rim to defeat the enemy of the Republic. But the Council felt it best if we moved with care and caution. The true threat, the Council feared, had not yet revealed itself. But Revan would not be dissuaded. Charismatic and powerful, it was inevitable many of the Order would flock to Revan's seemingly noble cause. Malak was the first to join his closest friend. Others soon followed, many of our youngest and brightest, intent on saving the galaxy from the Mandalorian threat. They were foolish to disregard the Council's wishes. I do not know what happened to Revan, Malak, and their followers on the farthest reaches.
In the waning days of peace, when the Outer Rim began to burn under Mandalorian conquest, a new voice rose within the Jedi Order, defiant. His name was Revan, and from his conviction of movement was born. Known as the Revanchists, or sometimes the Jedi Crusaders, this rogue faction of Jedi broke away from the Order's passive stance during the Mandalorian Wars. Founded in 3964 BBY by Revan, the Revanchists were driven by a belief that inaction in the face of evil was its own kind of corruption. The Jedi Council had cautioned restraint, but Revan had seen enough. War was here, and he intended to fight it. With his closest ally, Alec, at his side, Revan began rallying fellow Jedi to his cause. Their first missions were quiet, scouting incursions into the Outer Rim, gathering intelligence on the Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders. But when Revan discovered evidence of the Mandalorian genocide on Cathar, everything changed. The vision of a Mandalorian warrior's mask buried in the sand, haunted by the cries of the dead, ignited something deeper. Revan took up that mask as a symbol, swearing not to remove it until the Mandalorians were defeated. Though the Jedi Council still refused to officially endorse them, public and military pressure forced their hand. Begrudgingly, the Council allowed the Revanchists to operate under the Republic's banner, disguised as a mercy corps. But everyone knew what they really were: warriors cloaked in Jedi robes, ready to defy tradition in the name of justice. In the early days, Revan and Alec stopped at Taris to recruit more Jedi. There, Alec tried to sway a Padawan named Zane Carrick, unsuccessfully. Carrick's masters taught him to fight the Sith, not wage war against Mandalorians. But Alec reminded him, quote, "Sometimes you have to step into the dark to save the light." While Revan ventured to Onderon and Duxun, many Revanchists, including Alec, were captured on Surja. Taken to Flashpoint Station, an old Republic facility now twisted into a Mandalorian lab, they were subjected to brutal experiments by Demagol, a deranged Mandalorian scientist obsessed with unlocking the Force. It was Zane Carrick, along with mysterious Mandalorian defector Roland Dreyer, who led their rescue. But the war would carry on. Casualties would mount on both sides. Revan, standing amid the massacre's echoes, steeled his resolve. Under Revan's growing leadership, the Revanchists turned the tide. Revan and Alec, now Malak, rose swiftly through the Republic military ranks. Their tactics were brutal but effective. Their presence alone reinvigorated the Republic's flailing forces. Victory after victory followed, but something was changing in the heart of the Revanchist crusade. The Jedi who aligned themselves with Revan found themselves deeply embedded within the Republic's war machine, living side by side with soldiers in mess halls, aboard battleships, and on the front lines. To the Republic and its people, the Revanchists were champions, heroes who fought to turn the tide of the war. But beneath the surface, the cracks began to show. Some Jedi, disillusioned by Revan's increasingly reckless embrace of the dark side, chose to leave the conflict, their faith in their leader shattered. Others, more covert in their loyalty, were assigned by the Jedi Council to watch and report on the actions of Revan and his growing band of renegades. The Revanchists wore their Jedi robes as a mark of their heritage, but they were far from traditional. To survive the brutal realities of war, they fortified their attire with armor plating akin to those worn by the Republic soldiers. The once pure symbols of peace were now interlaced with the marks of battle. Among their most iconic weapons were the double-bladed lightsaber, a symbol of their willingness to forsake restraint for killing efficiency, a representation that reflected the weapon's darker origins. On Dantooine, Revan and Malak uncovered a mysterious artifact, one of the ancient Rakatan star maps. Guarded by an ancient droid, it whispered secrets of power. Malak hesitated at the threshold. Quote, "We cross this line, and there's no turning back." But Revan didn't look back. If there were doubts, he buried them with all the dead that had paved the path to this point. The Revanchists continued to carve their legend across the stars. They freed slave colonies on Lord 2, but not out of pure benevolence. Their goal was Force-sensitive Lordian gemstones, rumored to grant a fighter foresight in battle. Pragmatism had replaced idealism. The line between light and shadow began to blur. In 3961 BBY, Revan discovered another star map on Kashyyyk, followed by a descent into Malachor 5, a world steeped in dark-side energy and long-forgotten Sith secrets. There in the shadows of the Trace Academy, Revan learned of Korriban and the Sith Empire that had once ruled the galaxy. By 3960 BBY, the war reached its climax. On the scorched world of Malachor 5, Revan personally struck down Mandalore the Ultimate, but from the fallen warlord's lips came the chilling revelation. The Mandalorians had been manipulated by a hidden Sith. Revan took the mask of Mandalore and withheld it, ensuring the Mandalorians could never name a new leader. Their culture was shattered, their warriors scattered. With Malak at his side, Revan followed the trail of the true Sith Emperor, Vitiate, who shattered their wills, twisted their purpose, and sent them back to the Republic, reborn as his pawns. Revan and Malak eventually broke free, but the damage was done. They emerged as Sith Lords, taking on the titles of Darth Revan and Darth Malak. With the Star Forge in their grasp, they turned against the Republic they once fought to save. Most of the Revanchists, Jedi, followed them into darkness and became Sith themselves. Yet some, like Mitra Sirik, escaped this fate, scarred by their own experiences of the war. Though once hailed as heroes, the Revanchists became legends of warning, Jedi who walked willingly into the fire and returned wielding it.
R&K.
You are spending time with the servant of Atris. I knew her mother. She was a Jedi Knight, a master named Aaron Kai. Jedi are forbidden to have children, and when the crime finally came to light almost a decade later, Kai was exiled. She joined the Mandalorian Wars after the shame of her birth was revealed. Revan welcomed her, and she was said to be a skilled warrior, beautiful and strong in the Force. The Force flows strongly.
A Jedi Master of quiet strength and a shadowed past, she was a pivotal figure in Revan's rise. As his mentor, she guided him through the early years of his training, though she herself was no stranger to controversy. Kay was exiled, cast out for crimes that had been quietly whispered about but never fully understood. She had taken on a lover in secret, and it was only after her exile that she joined Revan, the man she once called Padawan, in the war against the Mandalorians, fighting not for the Republic, but for a cause far darker. Her legacy, however, would not be defined by her participation in the war, but by the secrets she carried with her to the grave. Kay was the mother of Brianna, an Echani child whose lineage would forever be entwined with the will of the Force. Her father was Usanis, a revered and powerful warrior, senator and general of the Echani. Their love, a forbidden affair, was a breach of the Jedi Code, which forbade attachments of such nature. For years, Aaron Kay concealed her relationship and the existence of her child, but when the truth came to light, the Jedi Order exiled her. Yet she was not alone in her banishment. Revan, having already fallen from grace, welcomed her into his ranks, and she fought beside him in the Mandalorian Wars, an alliance born of shared defiance. Usanis, bound by honor, followed her into the conflict, forsaking his sacred oaths. He would become one of the war's most heroic figures, but ultimately it was the call of his people that drew him back. After the war, he returned to the Echani, leaving the battlefield behind to serve as a senator. As for Brianna, their daughter, she would become known as the last of the Handmaidens, a guardian for Jedi Master Atris, a symbol of her mother's secretive rebellion. Brianna's fate was marked by the very oaths her mother had broken, her desire to follow the Jedi path stifled by the strict vows she had sworn alongside her sisters. The fate of Aaron Kay herself remained a mystery. Well assumed dead after the devastation of Malachor V, no body was ever found, leaving her end shrouded in uncertainty. Usanis, in a cruel twist of fate, would meet his end at Revan's hand during the Jedi Civil War, a casualty of Revan's crusade against the Echani worlds. Pharaoh.
A Cathar Jedi Knight, he was a fierce and determined warrior who fought in the Republic's war against the Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders. In 3964 BBY, he joined Revan's Revanchist movement, participating in a mission to the Outer Rim, where he and his fellow Jedi were ambushed by Mandalorians. Captured and tortured by the Mandalorian scientist Demagol at Flashpoint Station, Pharaoh and the others endured unimaginable pain until their rescue by Zankarik and his companions. During the war, Pharaoh's connection to the Force was keen. While on his homeworld of Cathar, he felt the Mandalorians' destruction of Sureko ripple through the Force, a grim premonition of the horrors to come. When the Jedi High Council sent a delegation to disband the Revanchists, Pharaoh and the others experienced a shared vision of the Mandalorians slaughtering the Cathar people. Though the Council still withheld full support for Revan's cause, Pharaoh and the Revanchists were granted permission to fight under the Republic Mercy Corps banner. Pharaoh was known for his courteous nature and his willingness to defy the Jedi Council for the greater good. He was eager to share the Council's reluctant approval with Zankarik and showed deep gratitude toward his rescuers. Though compassionate, Pharaoh was no stranger to conflict. He argued against Malak's violent actions after Demagol's defeat, trying to keep his fellow Jedi from descending further into darkness. Pharaoh wielded a blue-bladed lightsaber, wearing traditional brown Jedi robes. His sense of duty to the Republic was unwavering, but his connection to his homeworld and the atrocities committed against his people made him a force for justice. His Force sensitivity allowed him to feel the devastation of distant worlds, and he would forever carry the burden of those memories as he fought in the name of something greater than himself.
Dakwa, Dar, and Akkadi. A Zabrak Jedi Knight was a warrior deeply marked by the trails of the Mandalorian Wars. When the conflict erupted in 3976 BBY, he joined the Revanchists. But as the war raged on, Revan's discovery of forbidden Sith teachings led him down a dark path, while his fellow Zabrak Jedi, Akkadi, succumbed to the allure of the dark side. Dar resisted, choosing instead to remain on his homeworld of Iridonia, though he felt the pull of a destiny he could not quite grasp. As the Jedi Civil War erupted in 3959 BBY, Dar found himself battling the last remnants of the Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders, still present on Iridonia. When a group of Mandalorian mercenaries attacked a Republic communications center, Dar was dispatched to repel them. Nearly overwhelmed, he was saved by Akkadi, now fully turned to the Sith. Akkadi, using his new dark influence, tried to convince Dar to join him. Fueled by resentment and feeling stifled by the Jedi, Dar was drawn to the idea of embracing his aggression. Unaware that Akkadi had orchestrated the Mandalorian attack as part of a larger Sith plot, Dar reluctantly joined his former comrade. Unknown to Dar, Akkadi had donned the Mandalorian armor of a rally master himself to encourage and lead the Mandalorian attack, instigating the whole affair. As Dar and Akkadi made their way to a private hangar in the town of Warton, a group of Republic agents led by Force-sensitive individuals tracked them down. Dar, now torn between his past and future, met with them and argued his decision to turn the Sith, pointing out the flaws in the Jedi teachings. But before the conversation could resolve, Akkadi, having set his plans in motion, left to sabotage the Republic flagship, the Champion of Iridonia, orbiting the planet. The Republic agents, having survived an ambush from Sith commandos, followed him to the cruiser, hoping to avert a disaster. Dakwa Dar was a man caught between two worlds. His scars, both physical and emotional, from the Mandalorian Wars made him volatile, and he believed the Jedi had kept him from embracing his true nature. His meeting with Akkadi only further solidified his internal conflict, and the teachings of the Jedi seemed increasingly hollow in the face of the dark side's promise of power. He was a Jedi whose destiny had yet to be written. But his journey would see him wrestle with the darkness within. Dar was a man conflicted, torn between his Jedi upbringing and the allure of the dark side. He had always felt constrained by the Jedi Order, believing it suppressed his natural aggressions. His emotional scars from the Mandalorian Wars made him temperamental, but it was his inner conflict that defined him. Akkadi's influence seemed to confirm his doubts about the Jedi path, pushing Dar further into a rebellion against the Order's teachings. Dar was a skilled Jedi, proficient in lightsaber combat and the Force. He favored defense, using the Force to bolster his lightsaber techniques and to manipulate the battlefield with telekinesis, creating storms of debris or moving objects with ease. He also had the rare ability to mask his Force presence, allowing him to remain undetected by other Force-sensitive beings. This skill would prove invaluable as he walked the razor's edge between light and darkness. Dakwa Dar wore dark brown Jedi robes, marked by the battle wear of a warrior constantly at odds with fate. Scorched by blaster fire, torn at the sleeves, and caked in dirt, his attire was a reflection of his journey. He carried a lightsaber of his own creation, an emblem of his lingering ties to the Jedi path, even as he stood on the precipice of the dark side. Akkadi, the Zabrak Sith agent, was a master of deception and manipulation. As the Republic agents closed in on him, he led them on a deadly game of cat and mouse, accompanied by his ally Dar. The two traveled to Akkadi's private hangar. The Republic agents that confronted the pair both had once crossed paths with the Zabrak, and it was their belief that Akkadi's flirtation with dark knowledge, specifically their own Force traditions, was pushing him to corrupt Jedi and fuel Darth Revan's growing Sith empire. He had slipped off the planet, leaving his former ally Dar in the lurch, facing off with the Republic agents as he made his way to the Republic flagship. There, he planned to sabotage it, setting the stage for a devastating surprise Sith attack on the fleet. As the Republic agents fought off Akkadi's commandos on the ground, they discovered his true intentions and raced to the champion of Iridonia to warn Admiral Rokon. But by the time they arrived, he had already infiltrated the ship. Disguised in a stolen Republic naval lieutenant's uniform, he and his commandos made their way to the engineering station, where they began their sabotage. Akkadi, using the power of the dark side, turned the ship's system against its crew, sending a burst of electrical energy through the control panels, killing most of the crew and injuring the admiral. When he addressed the Republic forces over the comms, a cruel taunt, a reminder of how far he had fallen. As Akkadi and his commandos moved to seize the ship's bridge, the Republic agents, having arrived just in time, engaged him in a desperate battle for control. Akkadi's striking appearance was only a glimpse of the complexity within. His skin, pale and marked by intricate tattoos that framed his horns and gave him an almost mask-like appearance, reflected his duality. His smooth, low voice, laced with an Iridonian accent, hid the turmoil that had driven him down the path of the dark side. Charismatic and persuasive, Akkadi had a knack for manipulating others, pulling them into his web with promises of power and freedom. Those who knew him best recalled his rebellious nature. Even in his youth, he was always drawn to the fringes of Jedi teachings and the forbidden knowledge of non-Jedi Force traditions. Akkadi's mastery of the Force was unmatched, blending his Jedi training with dark side knowledge. His abilities extended far beyond basic Force powers. He was a skilled practitioner of far-seeing, able to glimpse other places and times, and wielded Force lightning with ease. He could cloak his presence in the Force, making him nearly invisible to all other Force sensitives. In combat, he favored using the Force over his lightsaber, employing telekinesis to manipulate his environment and incapacitate his enemies. Akkadi's red-bladed lightsaber was a symbol of his fall, the hilt intricately designed with entwining black and white patterns, a reflection of his fractured identity. He also carried a heavy blaster pistol and a comlink, practical tools for his sabotage missions. Voren Renstall.
Later known as Darth Voren, he was once a promising Jedi who fell from grace during the tumult of the Mandalorian Wars. Born into the era of the Galactic Republic, Renstall trained as a Jedi on Ossus under his master's tutelage. As the Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders began their brutal campaign against the Outer Rim in 3976 BBY, Renstall fought alongside the Jedi until tragedy struck at the First Battle of Onderon, where his master was slain. This loss led Renstall to join the Revanchists. Following the defeat of the Mandalorians in 3960 BBY, Renstall, now fully committed to Revan's cause, journeyed into the unknown regions. There, the Revanchists turned to the dark side, adopting Sith teachings and establishing Revan's Sith Empire. Renstall took the Sith title of Darth Foreign, eager to rise through the Empire's ranks. Under Revan's command, he became an apprentice, eventually serving aboard the Sith flagship as a security officer. In 3957 BBY, during a crucial moment in the Sith Empire's war against the Republic, Vorin found himself at the heart of a major battle. As Republic forces launched a daring attack on the flagship, a strike team infiltrated the ship's security command center, led by Jedi Knights and Republic agents. It was there that they encountered Vorin, commanding a squad of Sith troopers and marauders. The Republic team fought their way through the center, ultimately obtaining the codes necessary to disable the ship's defenses and allowing a Jedi team to capture Revan. Vorin was driven by ambition, hoping to quickly rise within the Sith hierarchy by outmaneuvering his superiors. His desire for power was palpable, and he sought every opportunity to prove himself. Cloaked in dark robes and a featureless black faceplate, Vorin's appearance mirrored his mysterious and ruthless nature. As a Sith apprentice, Vorin wielded a range of dark side abilities. Skilled in telekinesis and mind manipulation, he could move objects at will and influence others' thoughts. His mastery of the dark side was evident in his use of Force Lightning, Force Slow, and the terrifying Force Rage that amplified his power. Additionally, he created energy-resistant fields to shield himself from attacks. He was fluent in both basic and Sith. Vorin was as skilled in the art of deception as he was in combat, making him a formidable force within the Sith Empire.
Fall of the Revanchists. Many more Jedi would join the Revanchists, including the exiled Jedi Mitra Surik and legendary Jedi Master Zez Kai, El's own Padawan who would defy the Order and her master. Whether their cause had ultimately been justified or not, the Revanchists would all have to contend with the fallout of their decisions. The scars of war, and many would fall away from the Jedi path, either as broken individuals or become the antithesis of all that they were, becoming Sith themselves. In any case, each individual became a tragedy, forsaking relationships, breaking oaths and bonds. Masters would lose apprentices. Apprentices would fight their masters as the Jedi Order fractured. And yet, despite the glimmer of hope that returned with Revan's redemption, darker days awaited the Jedi in the Old Republic.
Welcome aboard the Millennial Falcon. This is Christian.
And this is Jordan.
We're currently exploring the beautiful sandy beaches of Cathar, looking for any artifacts in the sand that we might be able to rescue from this beautiful but horrific sight.
Yeah, and definitely put it in a museum and not sell it on the black market at all.
Would never do that.
Not for 1 million credits, or I would do it for a Patreon member. If you wanted to sign up and become a Patreon member, I will give you an artifact from Cathar itself. Yes, I will.
It's not supported by Star Wars Legal.
Yeah. But on that note, if you want to become a Patreon member, only $3 USDs a month. Hey guys, that's less than most coffee places, unless you like really cheap gross coffee. So yeah, $3 a month. You can become a Patreon member, get access to all the bonus episodes. We have a nice little growing catalog in there on the Patreons that you can get access to. And if you wanted ad-free listening as well, that's another big one you could do. And that's a $5 tier, $5 a month. But you also get not just ad-free listening to all the newer episodes, but all the bonus episodes as well. So single episode buys on Patreon as well. We also take single donations. PayPal, starlordspodcast@gmail.com. And you can buy merch on Redbubble. Our link is in the description of the show. And if you guys like the show, you can't support monetarily, absolutely not a problem. But one way you could totally help us out, rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts, especially Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Those really help us out. Numbers have been looking good lately. I think it's a lot of those Apple reviews. So thank you guys. And if you wanted to get in touch with us, we are on Discord, Instagram, X.com, Facebook, and all those good ones. So just search Star Wars Podcast in any of those platforms, and you should be able to find us. But if not, you can also look for the links in the episode description as per usual, and any other business inquiries, questions, or comments, please email us at starlordspodcast@gmail.com. And you know what, don't forget to send your Star Wars collections, fan fictions, headcanon, in-universe ads, all that kind of stuff. We love hearing it and seeing it. We got more getting lined up here, so we're gonna release some more of that content from the fans. All right, Christian, back to you.
All right. Well, as you can tell by the last couple episodes, we're kind of back to the Old Republic era, kind of exploring the Revan, outside of Revan character, like ancillary characters. This episode's a lot like our episode on the Knights of the Old Republic, where we discuss like the Calvisative characters of like all the Jedi Council and stuff. In this case, we're looking at the Revanchists. While there are a couple of big names in there, significant characters, there's also not a lot of named Revanchists other than Malak and then the few we went through in this episode. You'd think that a faction of that scale and scope would
they
have,
had thousands of Jedi, right? Like
it was a whole movement.
But you can't name every single one of them.
No, but you would think it would be cool to have more insights from other points of view. I really like the Zabrak pair there because they had kind of their own storyline going on the side. I believe they came from an RPG, like pen and paper RPG book.
Oh, okay.
That was tied to Knights of the Republic, if I'm not mistaken.
Interesting.
So that's why they have a lot more depth and like their own kind of narrative going on, whereas a lot of the other ones are very closely linked with the main Revan storyline.
Right. I will say though, I do appreciate the ones that they do have, that they had them. It just sort of adds some more. Like it adds some more, I don't know, humanity to the people who joined up with Revan, you know, and a lot of them had their own stories, and you kind of get to explore that a little bit. So
yeah, it adds a lot of depth.
Yeah,
that's why I want to see more of it. Is what I was getting at. Is like it's such a cool sub faction, like Jedi that are doing good, and then you can go from there. Like it leaves so many doors open. Like if let's say you wanted to do an RPG character based on a Revanchist.
Yeah.
Did you follow the dark side? Mm-hmm. Did you remain true to the light, but you're like scarred by war? Did you, did you come back and join the Jedi again and kind of like regret what you did? Like there's so many different angles you could play from, which they're a real cool faction that I think is underexplored for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Aaron K.
I was going to say like, I don't know if anyone's like read in Warhammer 40K, like the Horus Heresy books.
Yeah.
There's so many ancillary characters there, but they do it quite well, I think, where you actually like are interested in these characters, and like you end up, going on Google and like going down all these rabbit trails of like, what are these characters? What do they actually like look like? What's their armor scheme?
What do they get up to? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, I'm sure like the novels kind of explore that a little bit, but I don't know. They did it well in the Horus Heresies in making you invested in like a lot of just what on the surface would seem like kind of not that important of characters, but
yeah, and I mean that's also Star Wars in the nutshell. Whenever there are some notable Revanchists who I didn't mentioned by name, who are named, but like there's a paragraph because they appeared in one scene, like a flashback or something. So yeah, like that's one of the beauties of Star Wars is exactly that thing of like you look at a bar scene and like every character has a background, like every character in the background has a name and a story. Yeah, right.
Sure.
So yeah, this is like just ripe for that. All right, let's get into some of the ones we talked about. Erin Kay, she has some significance in more than one way. There is a bit of a fan theory that she is also Kreia. Overlap in her backstory of being like one of Revan's early teachers. And a couple other points. She has the white hair like a Chani do. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of like little details that certainly would be possible.
Yeah.
And we can explore that a little more in a Kreia episode coming down the pike here. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that like it's not official. It's definitely more of a fan theory.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall exactly like in the games what Kreia led on about how much she knew about Revan. I know she obviously mentions him a lot. And seems to have known him.
Yeah, she is his master. Was his master.
Was she?
Yeah.
Oh. Man, that is like slipping my mind now.
Yeah. If you haven't played it in a while, now's a good time to pick it up again. Yeah. So that there is like I said, there's a fan theory. It's one of those things that I think is cool either way. I like this mystery-ish character who's kind of quite significant, but I don't like when all the characters end up being like a smaller cast, right? Like the galaxy gets small. Like,
yeah,
we can leave some doors open for other characters to exist as well. But at the same time, the thought that Kreia and Erin Kay being the same character is also kind of cool and mysterious. And like, you know, they never found Erin Kay's body. She disappears, reappears as Kreia.
Yeah.
Brienne, her daughter, would not recognize her as her mother because she would have been so little when her mother disappeared that she wouldn't know, right? There's all kinds of little details. But again, it's not confirmed. So anyone who's on that boat, we cannot ourselves confirm nor deny whether or not that's true. But it's a cool, interesting factoid. Ultimately, though, what I wanted to get at with this whole discussion around the Revanchists was just the weight of Revan's fall. He took a lot of people with him. It wasn't just Revan and Malak. There were a lot of Jedi who kind of like went down this dark descent.
Yeah.
And like the story of all the Revanchists have this like tragic twinge. Even the ones that didn't fall to the dark side. You have people like Mitra Surik and other Jedi who were so scarred by everything around the Mandalorian Wars, what they did, what happened.
Yeah.
It's very much like a war is brutal. No one gets out of it without any kind of trauma.
Yeah, I mean, the whole era is really pretty significant. I'm glad they did it that far away from the original trilogy, like 4,000 years, you know, because it gives you a little distance to actually write a compelling story without having to interfere too much with the original canon. But I mean, it was like, if you imagine, like, it's hard for us because we didn't grow up in that generation, like World War I and like trench warfare.
Yeah.
And this was really like, it was after World War I and mass media that like the sort of there was a lot more skepticism about war after World War I.
Yeah, the romanticism faded away from like the epics and the heroic tales, and you know, the story that the people that hadn't actually been there kind of painted war to be.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like just war is hell, right? I mean, this is what happened with the whole Sith Wars and Jedi Civil War, rather. It caused like such a traumatic event on the galaxy that is hard to like overstate and hard to really even comprehend. And just the millions and millions of people. And it wasn't just the Jedi Civil War, but it was like back-to-back wars, like the Mandalorian War, which was absolutely brutal.
And these wars feed into each other. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's a cascading event.
Yeah. I also kind of like how, I don't know if they did this intentionally, but like the Mandalorian Wars like led into the Jedi Civil War. And if anyone has like read for even a few chapters of a book about World War II, they'll quickly realize that it was just a continuation of World War I, you know? And that's kind of what the Jedi Civil War felt like. It was like more of a continuation of the Mandalorian Wars as opposed to like
a new thing.
Yeah, like what happened in the Mandalorian Wars, there was no resolution yet, right? Like, and Revan and Malak were gonna bring that resolution. So
very much the entire KOTOR era earned the name Star Wars plural.
100%
for sure.
Yeah,
and just more, like I said, to the weight of Revan's fall. Like when you play KOTOR 1 and if you choose to play Revan as he is in canon with his redemption arc, does it, and this question does come up with Darth Vader too, actually, and also the question of like, how do you redeem so much evil, right?
Yeah.
Like, is that enough? Is it enough for Revan to just turn to the light? Like, again, think of all the destruction.
I mean, just what happened at Malachor 5
alone, let alone every other battle and conflict.
It's it's hard to even imagine that something like that could be redeemed. You know?
I don't know if I ever mentioned this on one of our previous episodes, but I do. A certain individual in real life actually comes to mind. I don't know if it was Uganda, but there was a warlord who used child soldiers. He used to go by General Butt Naked because he would fight in the nude.
Oh, yeah.
And he has quite the redemption arc.
Really?
He talks about a lot of the horrific practices and things that they did. I believe they engaged in cannibalism.
Yeah.
And I'm sure other sexual violence and all kinds of stuff. But then he finds faith and does like a 180 and like he submits himself for like to be charged on war crimes, but they let him go and blah blah blah. And like there's really no, you often get the case of like people on death row, for example, who have this 180 turn and suddenly they're the best person in the world, but no one really knows if it's genuine because like is it because you are thinking you can get some leniency? But this guy, like, he has no reason to.
He turned himself in.
Yeah, exactly. He turned himself in for judgment, and he was fine with even being executed. And he's like, I deserve it. I did a lot of bad stuff.
It really is, because it's hard not to be like cynical about human nature.
Yeah.
And I mean, you should.
Yeah, I rely on being cynical,
but like it is like, okay, there's a spark of hope every now and again, and like good things can still happen in the ashes of tragedy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's just kind of that question that's out there, right? Like, and often that's why they have to kill off these like characters that find their own personal redemption, because it's like, okay, how does the galaxy feel about, let's say Darth Vader survived.
Yeah.
How does the galaxy feel about Darth Vader doing a 180, right?
Yeah. Probably not going to go over super
well. Like imagine if Hitler or Stalin does a 180, right?
Yeah.
Like it would be strange for sure. In any case, it just, like I said, it lends a weight to Revan's fall and his later redemption. Like, what does that look like? Because he doesn't get to die after he turns around. I
will say, actually, as well, when it comes to like tyrants who've committed mass murder, it's actually very rare they ever like admit that they did anything wrong. And they like vociferously defend themselves, and it really seems genuine that they believe
what they did was right.
Yeah, they believe what they did was right. And famously, like during the Nuremberg trials, I know like a lot of Hitler's top guys were like laughing during the trials and stuff. Like when the the accusations were brought again. They were like very nonchalant about it, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of them didn't even think that they would get actually punished in any way. And really, because they were sort of stuck in an old world mentality where that was what they did was like kind of normal. And when the war was over, kind of everyone just lets bygones be bygones. And now like they were actually being held accountable. You know, but like, yeah, there is just this like, when tyrants are caught, they very seldom will admit what they did wrong. You know, like I even think more recently of Saddam Hussein, who was caught, and you know he had all his he had all his justifications for like American imperialism and meddling in his country, and you know, which is all true. It's not necessarily wrong, but he also like severely abused his own children, and those children grew up to be like complete monsters.
Yeah.
Like the sons of Saddam Hussein are like famously known as like
sadists.
Yeah, sadists, and what he did to like the Kurds and stuff. Like he was a terrible guy, but just like everything he did, he had to do, right?
Yeah.
Like there was
in his own mind.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. Like,
well, I mean, it goes back to that adage, you know, the road to hell. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And bringing that back around, like that is a question about the Revanchists.
Yeah.
Now, I have been pretty heavy-handed on the Revanchists, you know, the implication being that like were they right or wrong in what they did. Yeah. I feel like the narrative is trying to say something in that yes, they were wrong, but they also leave it up for the audience to kind of decide.
Yeah.
Only in that because the Revanchists have that out of like they didn't all turn to the Sith, right? But because Revan, their leader, and a good chunk of them do end up falling to the Sith, I feel like that's what the narrative is saying is like maybe they shouldn't have done this. Maybe that was the wrong decision.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm reading into it also. I'm okay with being wrong on that.
Yeah.
But I feel like that at the same time they ask the question, you know, are the Revanchists wrong for going against the Jedi Council? Are they wrong for choosing to get involved? Like the Mandalorians were doing horrific things, right? Like maybe they had to get dirty, you know? Yeah. And that question, you know, is a very real question, right? Like when is the right time to go to war? Like war is so horrific. Is there a right time? And what's the cost? And, you know, knowing that it's going to be a heavy price to pay, when do you choose to pay it, right?
Absolutely. And one more question is, Christian, have you tried Mando?
That was not the smoothest transition.
I thought I'd bring it up now. better
Talk about the Mandalorian Wars.
Yeah,
How did they keep themselves clean, Jordan?
So Mando is a great men's hygiene product that we have partnered with. I've used their products. I can attest to it. I quite enjoy it. It's a very subtle, nice, pleasant smell. They have all sorts of things like stick deodorants, body washes, that kind of thing. But make sure you check out the Mando Starter Pack, which is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash or deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners of the show, new customers get a $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. So use code STAR, STAR, at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. And use the code STAR. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. Once again, use the code STAR at shopmando.com and let them know the Star Lords guys sent you. All right, back to the show.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, the question of justification. And yeah, the reverse is also true. When you make the wrong choice, how often people do justify that, no, I was right all along, and they double down, right? And that's when you get some real horrific stuff that potentially comes up.
Yeah.
We kind of discussed this in a previous episode too about utilitarianism, right? Like, okay, if X number of dead bodies means this, then we should commit X number of dead bodies back. You know, you start to rationalize it as a calculation and the horrors that can lead to. And I think sometimes just asking the question is enough to get people thinking about it. In this case, you know, like, was the Jedi Council right all along once again? And so that question comes up around like I was going to say the New Republic area, the later Old Republic, with the whole thing with Anakin, right? A very simple reading is, oh yeah, you know, if people just listened to Mace Windu and didn't train Anakin, things would have been right. The Jedi Council was right. And then the reverse of that is Anakin would have always been the chosen one. Anakin was right to love and the Council was wrong to forbid the love aspect, right? Which is kind of rectified with Luke Skywalker's council.
Yeah.
So I feel like in this case, there's kind of an argument to be made on both sides where, you know, had Revan listened to the council, maybe the Mandalorians would have just ripped through the Republic regardless and murdered everyone. Maybe the reverse of that is, you know, there was a price to pay and they kind of...
I mean, I honestly, I don't think so. I think so, but I think that the like everyone would be speaking Mandalorian, so to speak.
Right.
I do think it does seem like
they were justified in their intervention.
Like the Mandalorians were going to take over the Republic.
Sure.
Like it almost seemed like an inevitability.
But it, like, ultimately the question is, it's at the cost of the souls.
Yeah.
Of all of those that went to fight.
I mean, maybe that's the cost you have to pay.
Certainly, yeah. And I think, again, it echoes that real life thing of like, yeah, we're going to send a bunch of young kids into war, which is going to destroy them emotionally, even if they survive.
Yeah.
Is it worth it? You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing that makes it worse, and this is why I say like the question should be asked, but I think the narrative answers it for you in the sense of like they become the monsters themselves.
Yeah.
So this is a situation where, let's say World War II happens, you send all your forces out to fight the Nazis, and then your soldiers come back and start killing your own civilians.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like at that point, was it worth it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Right. So
yeah, they form militia and like take over your government.
Right. Exactly. But like it just as aggressive as the previous regime that they fought against.
Yeah.
And that goes to the whole Nietzschean, like, be careful when fighting monsters not to become monsters. Right.
Yeah.
You know, if you go too far and let's say you are fighting a just cause, but you start to become so hateful or embittered by your cause that you start murdering civilians back, right? Like,
yeah,
you start doing the things that made you angry and triggered your response to begin with, right? You know, if you're a police officer and you start extrajudicial killings, right? Again, right?
Yeah.
Like, there are scenarios where it can swing back the other way so badly that it may not have been worth it to begin with. But in any case, I do think, again, I'm more interested in the question than the answer, personally, because I think every situation would need to be analyzed, you know, to the nth degree with every possible like outcome predicted, which we especially can't do for science fiction. You could probably like do some element of that with real life, but for sure not in science fiction, because anyone can throw anything into the mix, like a hidden Sith empire that was manipulating events all along. But in any case, yeah,
for sure. Well, let's go into the mailbag quick, and then we'll wrap this thing up. So we got this question, sort of comment from Jacob. He said, "I listened to the episode about the hero's journey." So this was way back when in our first few episodes. If you guys go check that out. What was that one called? Did we just call it the hero's journey?
Possibly. That was a long time ago.
Or a hero with 1,000 faces or something odd like that. Anyways, in that episode, we sort of talk about the template, the Joseph Campbell template of the hero's journey, and how it's like obviously very much used in Star Wars. Anyways, I'll get back to the question here. So he says about the hero's journey just now. He says, I think the book 1984 doesn't follow it, or at least the book doesn't include a lot of the 17 points of the hero's journey. I say the book because the movie 1984 is more like a bad porno. if Star Wars, Disney, and Disney Snow White publicity had a child, that child would be hated, but the movie 1984 would still be worse. It was a great psychological torture, though, he says. Anyways, so there are some stories that don't follow the typical format of the hero's journey. We could almost call it the Disneyfication of
Hollywood.
Storytelling is sort of like interjecting the hero's journey in like every single story.
Yeah. I did respond back directly to him, but just to bring everyone up into the loop, I guess. Of course, not every story will follow it, and as time has moved forward and it's become formulaic within like Hollywood or writing circles or whatever, being taught in schools, it becomes like self-fulfilling, right? Where more people latch onto it. More people think it's successful, so that drives more people to latch onto it and recycle those ideas and so on and so forth. But no, it doesn't capture all stories. I think there's a lot of room to be told from like other cultures and other times didn't follow, obviously, a hero's journey. They have their own kind of story cadences or patterns in their storytelling.
Yeah.
It's not a catch-all, of course. You will always find exceptions. That is one of my big problems with the whole hero's journey thing, because the hero's journey author, I forget his first name, Campbell.
Yeah, Joseph Campbell.
Yeah. Kind of presupposes that all stories follow this. Like there's an inherent human ability to tell stories, and they all default to this. And then he like pulls from ancient stories that I think you have to kind of bastardize a little bit to make fit, which is the whole problem. I'm not going to go into this rant again. I did a whole episode on it. But fundamentally, not every story is going to follow it.
So I will say one thing I will say that maybe Joseph Campbell gets correct is that not necessarily like the whole format, but the transformation of the character. It seems to be like it's hard to even imagine like a good story where one or most or all of the characters aren't changed or transformed in some way. And I will say even even in 1984, that is also the case. You go from I can't remember.
For the record, I haven't seen the movie.
Have you read the book though?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But in the book, like Winston, that's his name. Winston is he does go through a transformation. It's a tragic one.
Sure, but again, you get into the whole like, so it's a simple transformation enough to claim everything else with it, right?
Yeah, perhaps Joseph Campbell is like sort of making a mountain out of a molehill. But I do think to like actually make a good story, that is a good insight, is like you actually have to have like,
a dynamic character. Yeah, and
a character that
we
changes,
have
right.
descriptions for them. They're static and dynamic characters, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Some characters won't undergo any change. Oftentimes, if they're your main character, they might be considered a little bit boring or uninteresting. Dynamic characters people do gravitate towards. Yeah. I think it depends on the type of story you're trying to tell and your audience. I think to me, it's just such a complex thing. Sure. And I think it's a good thing and it should be studied. And I'm not also saying that you should throw out the baby with the bathwater and should toss out the entirety of the hero's journey either. I do think there is value in it. But when you make...
there's some...
all-inclusive claims of like all stories follow this trend or your story has to follow this trend.
Sure.
That is where I have a problem.
I think I agree with that. I think that like there's still some stories that are clearly like the hero's journey, to me anyway, but they're still great stories.
Sure. They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
And you could have awful stories that follow the hero's journey too.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of that coming out these days. It's getting worse and worse.
It's too formulaic.
You think of like Frodo, right? Like that's like
absolutely not. I reject.
What?
I reject that Tolkien has anything to do with the hero's journey. But
no, Frodo fits the mold of the hero's journey. He totally fits the mold of the hero's journey.
I'm not.
Don't even.
We'll save it for our Lord of the Rings podcast. Anyways, As for your review for the film, now I feel like I have to go watch it.
I remember I've seen scenes of
there.
it.
There are elements of it that are like I was looking at pictures, like Google image search of the different 1984s, because there's also the 1984 that was released in the 50s.
Yeah.
And like there's imagery from it that like I believe Apple copied some of the imagery from one of their early commercials in the 90s.
That's not good.
Yeah. In any case, like there's some imagery of it that like for whatever reason has bled into like the cultural zeitgeist that I see and I'm like, oh, that's what that's from. But yeah, I haven't seen the movie.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen the full movie. But I mean, you're better off watching V for Vendetta. It's like 1984, but better film wise.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that's all I got for that. Anything else, Christian?
No, I think that just about covers it for this episode.
All right, we'll see you guys later.